Star Citizen's big ship sale event IE is coming to an end. Millions of dollars have floated through the internet into CIG's hands, but 2024 is actually on course to be the first year since 2017 that funding hasn't increased year on year. And if you look at the numbers of new backers, it's going to be a huge drop. Are CIG's marketing tactics starting to fail? Are we just bored of buying ships? Is this a blip, or does it signal trouble for the project? I'm going to pose 4 big questions and give my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on each of those in the comments. So, number 1, is the community bored of the whole Pledge Store game? Star Citizen has been built on the back of the Pledge Store. Seeing the pledge counter go up by millions of dollars at IE tells us that there's probably still a lot of people who do quite like buying spaceships, but I do wonder on the flip side if there's quite a lot of people who are just done with this part of the game. If you've been around for a while, tell me if this feels accurate. Initially, back in the day, funding the game felt pretty new and exciting. We were sticking it to the terrible publishers who would never greenlight a game as cool as Star Citizen would be. Chris Roberts was going to build us something truly special, and he needed our money to do so. Buying a ship every now and again to support the project kind of felt like you were helping the whole crazy dream happen. But I'm not sure that feeling of fighting against the evil game publisher is really there anymore. Back in the early days, when there was just a handful of devs working in a basement, CIG was effectively an indie game studio. But as the money has kept rolling in, the company has turned into a pretty large entity with hundreds of employees. And as we'll talk about in a moment, some of the marketing practices definitely give off large corporate vibes. The company has changed. Once upon a time, we might have looked at CIG like a child who's dropped an ice cream. We might feel sympathy for them and want to help them. But now they feel more like the factory who made the ice creams, and they're going to send us as many emails as possible to get us to buy every flavour. Another aspect of the Pledge Store is that hobbies can just grow stale. People can get bored of doing the same thing over and over again. Think back 10 years. Do you still have the same friends? Do you still do the same things to relax? A lot of time has passed, and people will also have changed. The joke that someone has graduated, got married, and had kids since they first backed Star Citizen is not really a joke. It's pretty true. Life has moved forward for a lot of people, and I wonder if some of those people, they've just fully scratched the itch of buying digital spaceships. I know for me, I don't feel that excited about building my fleet on the store really anymore. I'm much more interested in building it in the game one day. There are also other factors. If you picked up a brand new merchantman, I think it's probably pretty understandable if you are reluctant to spend more money. There are a lot of people waiting for a lot of ships that might still take absolutely years and years to arrive in game. For whatever reason though, it does seem as though a large part of the community is done with spending big money on the Pledge Store. So let's move on to question 2. Are CIG's marketing tactics starting to repel backers? If the Star Citizen community as a whole was combined into a single person, that person would have many, many problems. But I do think they would have to be described as somebody who was very financially generous. So when CIG, the marketing team, attempts to squeeze every last drop out of us, it feels, well, it doesn't feel that cool. Each event now has a ship sale element to it. We regularly get emails reminding us not to miss out on this ship or that ship. We've had in-game content like the F8 Lightning golden tickets or the F7A Overdrive events where gameplay is leading people to the store to spend more money, and it's effective. I own an F7A Mark II. These tactics do get results, but it doesn't feel great to be on the other end of them. It's been very clear over the last couple of years that CIG has been trying pretty much every trick in the book to keep funding going. Playable now trailers on YouTube, ads running everywhere, all sorts of things. But at least this year, it doesn't seem to be working as well. Like we mentioned earlier, it looks as though 2024 will see the first drop in funding since 2017. And let's hope that the company was prepared for this and we don't see any substantial job losses. Are these slightly scummy marketing tactics solely to blame for this drop in funding? Well, it's not that simple, but they do affect CIG's brand. And let's go with Jeff Bezos' quote about brand. What do people say about you when you're not in the room? If I sat down with a Vandal and tried to describe CIG to them, I would probably say something like this. CIG is a game studio trying to make maybe the most ambitious game anybody's ever tried to make. They have regularly missed deadlines and the progress is incredibly slow, but there are signs that eventually they'll pull off something pretty special. They have always sold ships to fund the game, but over the last few years, there's been some sort of shift, and the marketing now can come across as being a little bit pushy and desperate. Now, for me, the marketing shift is pretty prominent in my opinion about the company, and I do think a lot of people are starting to feel the same way. On the flip side, though, this is the world we live in. We all get marketed to all of the time, and maybe we just have to accept that this is the way things are. But continually pushing current backers for new money does leave a bad taste in the mouth, and ideally, new funding would be coming from new backers. So let's talk about that next. Why are backer numbers so low? If there's anything that should worry CIG this year, it's the number of new backers coming into the game. And I'm going to blame this all solely on someone called Asmongold. Well, it's not really completely his fault, but he does have a part to play. We've mentioned brand before, but now we're talking about brand reach, the number of people who come into contact with your brand. And it looks as though Star Citizen's brand reach was just less effective in 2024. The wider gaming community just hasn't had any real reason to get its teeth stuck into the game. Why is that? Well, the game on the live servers hasn't exactly had a great year. Sometimes we forget that all this development stuff and ship sales, this is actually meant to be a game, and games are meant to be fun to play. Off the back of a very hyped CitizenCon 2023, the year of 2024 was, from a gameplay point of view, a bit of a letdown. We've had 3.23 and 3.24, lots of quality of life changes, and the game is undoubtedly better on many levels, but underneath it all, it's the same game it's been for ages. The game loops haven't changed much, and there's still no real meaning in the verse. 4.0 was aiming for the summer, but will now arrive right at the end of the year, at the earliest. And I imagine CIG were banking on 4.0 making a big splash in terms of funding and also in terms of new players. But the good news is that that opportunity hasn't been lost, it's just been delayed. Ultimately, this year we got less full patches, and the current state of the game is, well, it's lacking. It's not that enticing to the wider gaming community. Star Citizen in its current state is not really the sort of gaming experience that most people are looking for. Putting up with the bugs, the crashes, terrible performance is not something the average gamer will cope with at all. And those of us who play the game now are early adopters. CIG will hope that the masses join us, but it's pretty clear that the game is not ready for prime time yet. Another big reason why backer numbers are down is the impact of gaming influencers. What a horrible phrase, but one of the reasons why the game did really well in 2022 and 2023 was because large YouTubers and streamers found the game and made content about it. Now, back to Asmongold, if you're not aware, he streams on Twitch, but also uploads his content to YouTube, where it regularly gets hundreds of thousands of views. So in 2023, when he watched the Star Citizen engine trailer and was pretty enthusiastic about it, that had an actual tangible effect on the brand of the game and the reach of the game. Now, we could get into an argument about whether influence like this is a good thing or whether we like his views on certain topics, but the reality is large content creators hold genuine sway over people who watch them. But in a funny series of events, he didn't react to anything from CitizenCon 2024. He planned to react to the Squadron 42 video, but then he got banned from Twitch for a while, and then, there was a small election, and he's ended up not watching the video. Nothing that CIG can do about that chain of events, and it might sound silly, but him not making a video about the game means that thousands of people who would have been exposed to Squadron and Star Citizen were not. Now, IGN did post the Squadron gameplay, and it got a lot of views and lots of positive comments, but it seems as though most of the people didn't really understand that it was anything to do with Star Citizen. So the MMO component of the whole project, I don't think will have benefited massively from that video getting so many views. Now, this whole concept of influencers, it feels pretty awful to me, but again, this is the world we live in, and these huge creators do impact the reach of the game. And obviously it goes both ways. If they play the game and hate it, that opinion will be transmitted to the people who watch and negatively affect the brand of the game. Here is Shroud, another large Twitch streamer, giving his thoughts.
I feel like the community has been
sometimes
brainwashed.
Poorly some things work.
Yeah. Brainwashed. Manipulation. What is happening? This isn't real. There should be a study on this.
Now, this will not have been helpful for CIG, but ultimately it is on the company to get the game into a better state. Now, CIG will be hoping that 4.0 is an opportunity to impress people and change minds. If that doesn't happen, is the project in trouble? Let's move on to our last question. Like we mentioned earlier, we have no idea if the company had planned for a slight downturn in funding this year. I'm guessing not. They were pretty sure that 4.0 would originally arrive in the summer. And if things kept heading in this direction over the next few years, I think we could all start to be a bit worried. But CIG do have a few pretty big cards to play. 4.0 is about to launch and some new ships will come along with that. The ships will make some money, but the big hope will be that the interest in the game will spike. People who haven't played for years will come back, new players will be intrigued. 4.0 is a huge marketing opportunity for CIG. Now, ideally, the game would be working pretty well. Performance would be half decent and bugs would be kept to a minimum, but I don't think we probably should hold our breath for that. But one question will be, is there going to be enough content in the game to keep people playing for more than the normal couple of weeks that most people try out a new patch for? Other than the contested zones, which they won't be everybody's cup of tea, I'm not sure that 4.0 brings anything massively substantial for players to get stuck into. There'll be the new missions, but will people play them over and over and over again? I don't know. We're still not really even sure if peaceful players will be able to be in Pyro. Until 4.0 goes live, we just don't know how unlawful players will behave. Will every encounter in Pyro automatically turn into combat? But the new system could also appeal to a different crowd of people who are looking for that sort of gameplay experience. I'm personally very interested to see how the contested zones pan out. Will they be busy with players constantly fighting? If so, I can see myself spending quite a lot of time there. I like FPS combat, but if they're not that fun, or they're pretty empty, or the rewards just don't draw people in, it might be a bit of a flop. It should make for some good content at least, so I would expect some more of the FPS focused content creators to check it out. And I do think that 4.0 will have a significant impact on new player numbers and funding. As long as CIG can avoid a full-on 318 disaster, I think 4.0 should get 2025 off to a good start. Another card that CIG have been trying to play this one for many years now is Squadron 42. And I'm sure that the company is relying on Squadron to make a ton of money. If it does release in 2026, it will be a major injection of funds that should carry the whole project into the future, even if ship sales do kind of dry up. But as many people have said in the past, the release of Squadron 42 is probably the greatest opportunity CIG will ever have to market Star Citizen. If Squadron is good, which after all this time it better be, it's a pretty easy sell to say, hey, come over and check the MMO part of this game. If CIG can sell millions of copies of the single player version, then in theory they've got millions of potential customers who could also buy spaceships for Star Citizen. Now, this whole plan does though rely on the next card that CIG probably really need to play. The biggest and best long-term card that CIG can play is to actually make Star Citizen good. The vision for 1.0 seems to be the studio's attempt at shaping all of the work over the last decade into an actual game, and whether that works out or how long that takes, they're questions we're probably only going to be able to answer a few years down the line. But if the project can gradually start to become genuinely fun with depth and significant amount of content, that can only help funding. I think most of us who play the game now see enough to make us think this could one day be pretty special. We're sort of looking through somebody else's glasses, everything's a bit blurry, they've been cracked, they've been covered in mud, but we can just about see something that makes us excited for the future. But the wider gaming community looks through those glasses and just sees a complete mess. And like we said earlier, the current backers are early adopters, even after 12 years. But if CIG can start to deliver parts of the vision of 1.0 over the next few years, if they could start to deliver on that promise, then there is more people out there who could jump in and start spending money. And that's what CIG will be hoping. So I don't think CIG are in any real trouble at this stage. And ultimately, funding this year isn't that far off last year. The concern is the new backer numbers. But like we say, there are plenty of things that CIG can do to improve that. And we'll have to see how 2025 goes. But what do you think? Please give me your thoughts about these different questions in the comments.